Next, we are going to hear from Jason Fowler, the Global Business Manager at MJ Freeway. Jason currently leads Akerna's Enterprise Global Development Team. Akerna provides compliance cannabis software to thousands of cannabis operators across dozens of countries. Today, he will talk to us about a very important issue in the legal cannabis industry, which is traceability. Jason has a background in the tech industry and uses this experience to help marry technology and cannabis regulation in the most efficient and profitable way possible.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me virtually. Um, I'm excited to share with you what we have found as a company to be best practices with regards to traceability and technology and how it's leveraged, not just in the United States. My company, MJ Freeway, Akerna, is present in now over a dozen countries, supporting thousands of cannabis operators and governments throughout the world. And we have learned a few things in the 10-year history that we've been around, and I'm really happy and honored to be invited to share with you what we've learned. And you'll have to forgive the lighting. I just arrived in Colombia, and I'm doing this from a hotel room, so the image might not be great. Hopefully the volume and audio comes across well. My name is Jason Fowler. I'm the Global Business Manager here at MJ Freeway at Kerna. And what I would like to talk about today are what we consider to be the 5 major challenges that the cannabis industry is facing, regardless of where you are and what you do in that market. And let's break that up a little bit. So for Mexico, for example, we call them an emerging market, a market that hasn't developed fully yet cannabis regulations, but is considering cannabis regulations across um, the federal landscape, which is exciting. So what is the government that's considering cannabis regulations thinking about? What is important to them? We'll talk about that in a second. More importantly, how can they leverage technology and traceability and what we've learned over the past 10 years to ensure compliance, to ensure efficiency, to ensure profitability? Yes, that comes up. To ensure that they have visibility throughout that supply chain, and then the support to back up the technology to provide that experience, to ensure that the 3 Ps, as I call them, are achieved: product safety, um, public health, and patient safety. So those are the 3 Ps that I'll be focusing on in the next 20 or so minutes, and how it relates to compliance, efficiency, profitability, visibility, and support. Guess what? The same challenges face operators as well. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about that and how it relates to today, and and whether you like it or not. And here are those 3 Ps that I spoke of earlier. Uh, this week has been a very interesting week with regards to, oops, hopefully that still stands, with regards to traceability and why it matters. Uh, it's the end of September, and just last week, we've seen a lot of news about what people are calling vape gate, vaporizing devices that have been connected to the untimely deaths of certain people. I think we're the number more one person is a number too high, but I think we're up into the dozens now across a couple different states in the U.S. What does that mean what do these deaths mean with regards to why traceability matters and how traceability has evolved, particularly around public safety, patient consumer safety, and product safety? This is going to be the 3 Ps that really drive this discussion, and what we've learned from VapeGate, or these vaping related lung injuries and deaths that we've seen. Well, just like with anything, a lot of news is coming out, a lot of news that have caused tremendous amounts of knee-jerk reactions around who is responsible, what is responsible, where are the gaps in cannabis traceability, and what to do about not just cannabis traceability, but things that are being products that are being ingested, whether tobacco products or cannabis products, through a vape. From what I've seen, and from what I've heard with our experience in the space, there's already a couple of states and cities that are looking to ban all forms of vaping. I'm not here to debate whether that's a good or bad idea. What I'm here to describe is how we can think about traceability from a different perspective that's not being realized today. For example, why is there hydrogen cyanide in these products? Are these products from the black market? Are these legitimate products that are not counterfeited, throughout that somewhere along that supply chain? And the counterfeiting argument is essential to what governments need to instill in that market wherever they are. So the governments on one side are striving to build trust and to say, hey, we are regulating cannabis for the three P's: product safety, patient safety, and public enforcement, right? Do they all have, can we form enough trust so that end user, that patient, or that consumer knows that they can trust in the government because a transparent system throughout that supply chain has been established? No fake goods are being entered into that marketplace. If they were, we can easily track that they are fake, alert the appropriate people, the appropriate enforcement in real time, perform an amber alert, if you will, throughout that supply chain, ensure that that counterfeit or that failed test result that's associated with an end product is then halted within that supply chain and doesn't move until the appropriate enforcement or regulatory agency can go in and ensure that everything is safe to continue on. More importantly, what's happening after the consumption? And I like literations, and I like things that come in threes. So we have the three P's: product safety, public health, that's public enforcement, and then patient safety. What's happening with the patient? How do we know post-consumption that that diagnosis was correct, or that product prescription met that diagnosis, and now we're successfully tracking from seed to sale, which is what I like to call version 1.0 of traceability in cannabis, to seed to sale to self. And what we're seeing right now with this vapegate crisis, um, is alarming, because we are not tracking the basics from seed to sale and ensuring that we have full transparency, nor are we tracking what happens after that. And now we're working as a reactionary response and not proactively setting up the essential framework that ensures that we have good public health, patient safety, and product safety. So how big of a problem is this? It's a big problem. Counterfeiting is rampant, not just in cannabis, but when we look at consumer product goods, we can see that there are a lot of knockoffs. And cannabis is not isolated in that. You see, and I'm not, don't quote me, I've read a couple articles that said those were illicit black market vapes that were ingested and made that person sick. Okay, well, then there's nothing that cannabis traceability could have done, but how can we then address the fact that there's a serious cannabis counterfeit problem in the marketplace and ensure that that's not being consumed, or potentially eradicate that problem to ensure that we have healthy products going to healthy people. So what do I mean? Well, if you look on Amazon, you can find products. Here we have a Kingpin vape cartridge that you could buy marketing um, marketing cartons and labels that look like Kingpin vape cartridges, but they're not. They're counterfeit. That's how easy it is to get this product out in the market that might contain vitamin E acetate, or that might contain some sort of contaminant that's going to harm that end user. So how do we approach these challenges? And without having to really really tax that government, that end consumer, and that operator in cannabis. And when I mean tax, I mean it. How do we make this as efficient and cost efficient as possible? Well, we can glean bits and pieces from other regulated industries. So, for example, tobacco. Tobacco is an agricultural based product. We do see tobacco going through a different series of life cycles as that plant is grown and harvested and curated and made into a cigarette or a vape pen in this case. But unfortunately, tobacco doesn't go into a cookie, is not made into some sort of gummy. Cannabis is very unique in that we have a very unique plant that has a variety of different processes inherent in that supply chain where weights are of tremendous importance. And I'll come back to why weights are important, because we're going to talk about how big data can help us look into the cannabis market and detect and predict if those parameters are out of whack in that supply chain. So agricultural product good, unique value or unique qualities or characteristics of that plant are a little bit different. Same thing with agriculture. So you could argue that, hey, we have recall capabilities in agriculture. You know, on the nightly news when there's a cabbage recall, but we can't tell you that that cabbage came from the first row, second to the left. It's not that precise. And in cannabis, when we're talking again about something that potentially has to be tracked down to a plant or a lot, and to have an immediate real time recall, that's just not found in agriculture. Now let's go to alcohol. Alcohol, not an agricultural product, but a great industry to learn of how we can tax throughout that supply chain. Very identifiable when that alcohol is made. It's a Rioja wine, gets the hologram. That's a tax stamp from one market to the next. Maybe it's a spirit. There's some things that we can pull from alcohol, not entirely, particularly around taxing, and implement that into cannabis. Lastly, pharmaceutical world. Uh, are we growing medical, pharmaceutical grade cannabis? Yes, but it's not Advil. It doesn't have that precise and real time amber alert around where that plant has gone or where that Tylenol has gone. We can only give you broad ideas about what's in that particular pill. Or more importantly, that pill did not come from a plant that sat 90 days in the ground, that moved several locations throughout its supply chain, that changed weight. So there's non-agricultural lackings when we start talking about pharmaceutical products. So combine alcohol, agriculture, tobacco, and pharmaceutical into one to best speak about cannabis and how we should track that from seed to sale to self. So why us? Why am I here talking to you about this? Well, we've been doing this for a long time. MJ Freeway, Akerna, created the space over 10 years ago. We're now in every state that there's a regulated platform. We are doing some really cool things that I'm going to talk about around Traceability 2.0, and have since grown our database to help regulators, whether it's Health Canada, or whether it's Mexico, or the state of Pennsylvania, to understand how we can better ensure the three Ps, that everything is on the up and up, and we have data that tells us, hey, this is the parameter in which we should be focusing on when we're looking at a wet weight being reported after harvest. So what does that mean? How do we do that? Well, we identify a seed to sale process in the following way. We uniquely identify and connect the whole life cycle, every phase of that plant and that product journey, to a unique ID, a solo tag. What's in that solo tag? A whole lot of information. We can pack in test results, that COA, that certificate of analysis, all of the ingredients, who's been touching it. The key takeaway from the slide, and it might be a little hard to see, is that that solo tag is tracking all of the information that you're putting into MJ Freeway Akerna technology, and that is creating that chain of custody, so that when you look at that flower or that topical or that edible, that information, that little code, can be scanned, literally scanned, by any sort of smartphone. Doesn't require a specific tech platform. It's an app, and we can pull information of everything that happened in that journey, so that a couple of things can happen. Those consumers can interact with that solo code to be prompted to respond to different questions based on that product that they purchased. That's that unique tag, unique to that product. They could be prompted to answer certain questions based on the diagnosis that they received from their physician. The point is that we're creating a closed loop system around what was seed to sale, making it more secure, making it cheaper. Just a little background. Historically, the go-to was RFID tags. RFID, there's a reason why we don't have radio frequency ID tags in agriculture. It's really hard to keep track of each individual plant in a growing environment. Think about the ballast in that cultivation greenhouse. There's a lot of humidity there. There's a lot of things where that sensor, maybe especially in a sea of green growing, might not be able to pick up every individual plant as you move it. That could be a problem if you're working within a market that requires individual plant tracking. With a solo tag in our technology, you could then remotely say, hey, I'm moving bench 100 to growing room propagation, in literally one click. More importantly, these solo tags, and we'll talk about them in just a second, are more secure than QR codes. They hold more information than them, and they're very cheap to produce. Again, it goes back to public safety, right? Patient safety and public health. Those are what we're striving for. In Mexico, I know what you're also striving for is to eradicate the black market. How do you do that? You stay cost competitive. Your product that you sell medically has to be cheaper than the drug dealer around the corner that person can just go back to and keep buying from. So costs are kind of what one has to consider when they start putting together a regulatory framework around their market. So let's talk about these codes for 1 second. A really cool part about these codes is that they were designed by brilliant people in a way that is impossible to replicate. So they have inside this quasar, which is patent pending, or it already has a patent, I should say. There's hidden variations in the graphic in the code, a unique fingerprint, if you will. And you can customize these colors. The point is that unique fingerprint is unique to that individual wrap tag or that individual product, that finished product. We could have this code as el tricolor de Mexico, red, white, and green. We could have it any color that any color that you want. But the point is that this technology combined with MJ Freeway is adding additional level of security, an additional level of uniqueness, and how we carry that information throughout that supply chain. So why can't I counterfeit it? Well, old systems rely solely upon a mark to demonstrate authenticity. Leveraging this app secures the fact that, hey, if the app doesn't recognize that code, it will register as counterfeit. And once you register as counterfeit in that app, a prompt could happen to that local enforcement where they could come in and geolocate where you scan that code and make a visit. Or let's say an operator failed a test result, failed a couple of test results. With our technology, we could then give the appropriate law enforcement the alert that says, hey, these test results have been failed. Would you like to freeze these codes that are attributed to these failed test results in the supply chain so they no longer move? Bad actors in the space, we can shut down their product movement because everyone's using this code remotely. Before, we don't even have to be on site. We can freeze them and go on and see, is everything being followed appropriately? And that's what we've found to be the next evolution in cannabis traceability, is combining what the government needs from a visibility perspective with this tagging technology and what the operator is looking for from not just a compliance perspective, but a tool that understands the costs, that understands the costs and margins are inherently similar, but the yields and the forecasting, the business intelligence around what they're doing at the operator level, and putting that into a closed loop system so that everything is working in real time. And I can't, in our experience, the real time aspect is of crucial importance to give product or give your government or that enforcement agency the tools that they need in the alerts with the data baked in so that they know, hey, over here at the operator level, that operator reported a 93% moisture loss after harvest. That is a moisture loss number that doesn't fit within the norms of a regular cannabis operator. I don't care what strain you're talking about. Typical norms are anywhere from 83 to 87, 88%. That type of data layered on top of what you're regulating in real time will give you the peace of mind, if you will, to understand in real time everything that goes on through that closed loop system. How does that get together? A lot of different ways we can enter that in. APIs, manual entry, CSV files. This is something that is agnostic, if you want it to be, where you can use any type of system at the operator level to enter in, or you could run a closed loop system, enter in that data to that government that's tracking that supply chain. And this goes for everyone, facilities, testers, transporters. Imagine if you could scan in one click that you receive that giant 5-liter tube of CBN that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and track that giant product, very expensive product, and scan and be geolocated by scanning that product once you receive it, so that you know that it was A, received, and that B, it was received by this specific person just in a scan. So how it works, unique identifiers for plants and products via solo tags and solo codes. This is tracked by tagging and scanning, by individual item or batch or lot. Those larger markets like a Colombia, where you're tracking by batch and lot. Think volume. Think how quickly can I move large volumes of plant product just by scanning, instead of individually typing line items through some sort of traceability software. This can be streamlined, and you don't have to be expensive to be streamlined. And right now, part of traceability 2.0 is dropping that cost associated with 2.0 compliance and traceability. And then obviously, if there's a break in the system, whether that's a failed test result, something didn't show up when it was supposed to, according to that manifest, we can create custom alerts. We can layer on that data. These are all things that we could be doing right now. I'm not saying that that would have prevented what we've seen so far, but the fact that it wasn't being done, and that now we're having these knee-jerk reactions around um, what's clearly a major challenge, that we're going to shut it down, and all of that product is going to go back into the black market, instead of collectively coming together and ensuring that the government has the appropriate tools to ensure to support those three Ps, is where we are. Taxes, we talked about profitability. Guess what? We could put different taxes around that product as it moves through the supply chain. You might want to tax that CBN differently if it's recreational or if it's medical. Um, you want to see and project what that government body is going to receive in taxes when it's 1, 3, 5 years down the road. What does that look like? So what we call this is a mobile-enabled ERP platform, where we use a combination of MJ Freeway Akerna technology with solo tags and code throughout the supply chain, so that we can streamline. We don't have to be dependent on desktop softwares to track plant inventory and its movement throughout harvest, as it creates lots, as it creates different products, and track it post consumer purchase, seed to sale to self. No one else is closing that loop in cannabis currently. Well, except one. And why is this important? Again, it goes back to the beginning of my talk. It's efficient, it's streamlined, real time visibility. Uh, Government officials can customize what they want to see, what inputs and outputs are going on throughout that supply chain. More importantly, if the data that they layer on top of these reports triggers a custom alert, we can stop that particular operator's product movements in that supply chain. Let me skip ahead and talk about why this is this is just a list of all the different things, of all the different value adds that we could provide. But guess what? Somebody's already doing that. This is really exciting news for us, because we have seen the first time in any regulated market in the world is now happening in Utah. Uh, and Utah's a great case study, because we're seeing cannabis regulation pass in any state. When I say any state, I always think politics. This could be a red or a blue state. Utah, as we know, predominantly a red state, very conservative Republican state. Guess what? They not only have regulated cannabis, they have decided to use Traceability 2.0, seed to sale to self tracking, to understand or to provide true compliance, true efficiencies, true profitability, and true visibility throughout that supply chain. So it's really cool because now we're going to start collecting the government, the government of Utah, will be able to see what kind of positive outcomes quantitatively is decriminalizing or creating a medical cannabis market in your state or in your country going to show you. And at MJ Freeway at Kerna and at Solo Sciences, this is our goal. This is our goal to create something that we haven't seen yet, and that's why I titled this talk Traceability 2.0, the future of traceability, because this is already happening and will be happening in more governments, will be happening with more operators in a very near future. So having said that, I'm super excited that you took the time. Excuse the lighting in my room. Um, my contact information, jason.fowler@mjfreeway.com. It'll be provided to you as well after this presentation. And again, thank you for spending the time with me, and super excited to be invited to give this talk.